This is a breaking news alert at 5 in the morning Eastern Time. This is Saturday, October 15th, 2016. Please listen to this entire report from start to finish. I know it's a little bit long, but some of the most critical information is at the end of this video. After you have watched it, I want you to share this video with all of your social media networks. I normally try to create nice visuals for these video reports, you know that, but this one is of such urgency that I just ask your indulgence. Please just listen. The Independent DEFCON Reporting System, which is it's an organization that started in 1984 to gauge global geopolitical and military readiness events. They are reporting that the United States has been moved to DEFCON 3. That's the nuclear threat level. They're not the only ones. Some major news sites around the world are trumpeting the same claim on their websites. I'm talking about major sites like the Drudge Report, even the Daily Star in the United Kingdom are saying the same thing. There are 5 DEFCON levels. The lowest one, DEFCON 5, means you're in a state of peace. DEFCON 4 is above normal readiness. That's used to increase intelligence observations, strengthen security measures, but we appear to be at DEFCON 3. This is the defense status that indicates that the government is activating preparations to engage in a possible nuclear war. It also means that the Air Force will be made ready for mobilization within a 15-minute time period. During DEFCON 2, the U.S. military is ready to deploy and engage in a full nuclear-scale war against the enemy within 6 hours. We've only gone to DEFCON 2 twice in the entire history of the DEFCON system. That was during the Cuban Missile Crisis and at the outset of the first strike during the Gulf War. DEFCON 1 means that nuclear war is imminent, that it's going to be taking place within hours. Okay, DEFCON 3. During DEFCON 3, the plans for continuity of government go into effect. What is the continuity of operations? Here's what Wikipedia says. A continuity of operations plan or continuity of government plan has been part of U.S. government operations since at least the Cold War, when President Dwight D. Eisenhower provided various measures designed to ensure that the government of the United States would be able to continue operating after a nuclear war. Okay, guys, this is serious. America has only gone to DEFCON 3 times in history. It happened during the 1973 Yom Kippur War, when the U.S. sent a nuclear-loaded fighter jet to strike Cairo. I reported on this. I did a video series on this. That was one of the times. Of course, they called off the strike before it happened. This happened, we went to DEFCON 3 on September 11th, 2001, after the nation was attacked. The other time, the third time, was in 1976, and it was only a limited DEFCON 3. It was initiated only for the soldiers, U.S. military in Korea, because of some crazy event that had happened over there. So for us to potentially be at DEFCON 3 again, this is significant. The United States has not gone to this point in a very long time. If this report is true, and I'm going to explain to you here in a moment why I'm pretty sure that it is true. What that means is that the USA is right now actively preparing for the reality of a possible nuclear exchange with Russia. Listen, guys, I've not mentioned in my videos this past week something that I'll say now because I can't reveal my sources. But I will say that I have gotten several unconfirmed reports that some of the U.S. troops that are stationed overseas have been making phone calls back to their family members here stateside to tell them that they are hearing that things have gotten so serious that they believe that nuclear war is a possibility. And so they are calling their families back home to tell them to start making preparations for a nuclear war, to get ready just in case. Now, I don't know if that's true, but I'm telling you now, I'm hearing a lot of this kind of chatter. I haven't wanted to be accused of fear-mongering or clickbaiting, which is why I've not mentioned this previously. You know, I normally don't give my personal opinions in these reports. I try and remain fact-based. So let me run down some facts with you. Most of these things I'm going to list to you, you can verify for yourselves fairly easily. I'll put links to a lot of the sources in the video description, but listen, I don't have the time right now or the interest in trying to prove all of this to any of you naysayers. If you're too cynical to accept any of this, I'm sorry, but honestly, I just don't care about your opinions right now. Fact, since 2011, the United States has been trying to overthrow the Syrian government. It started the effort by using Islamic mercenary forces, including some groups that later formed ISIS. They used them to wage a bloody and brutal fight to conquer the Syrian army and overthrow Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. In 2013, it became clear that the mercenary forces would not be able to conquer Syria without help. That's when the CIA in Syria responded by helping to coordinate a false flag attack involving ISIS militants using chlorine gas chemical weapons on a Christian community there in Syria, and they blamed the attack on President Assad. At that time, President Obama had just said that if there was a chemical weapons attack that hypothetically would take place, that constituted a red line for him, and that the United States was going to personally go in and remove Assad from power if that happened. And of course, it suddenly happened. But Russia's Vladimir Putin responded by telling the United States that he knew that it was a lie, and evidence did come out that it actually was the CIA that armed these, quote, moderate rebels to pull off the attack. We've got video of it. But Putin said that he was prepared to repel this direct military attack on Syria by the United States, even if that meant he had to use nuclear weapons against us. Okay? This caused Obama to cancel the planned attack on Syria. That was 2013. The CIA responded to Putin's interference. They paid him back by orchestrating the overthrow of Russia's neighboring nation of Ukraine. The government in Ukraine had been very pro-Russian. The president spoke Russian. He didn't even speak Ukrainian. But the U.S. went in and installed a pro-Western puppet regime in its place after they overthrew the government. This coup outraged the eastern half of Ukraine because the people there are almost all ethnically Russian. They speak Russian. They're basically Russians. And so a civil war broke out, and the chaos included Crimea, which is down there in the Black Sea. They voted to withdraw from Ukraine and requested to become part of Russia, and that's how tensions jacked up even higher. Barack Obama led Western and European nations in responding to that by exacting extremely harsh economic sanctions on Russia, and these sanctions have dealt a very severe body blow to the economy of Russia. The ruble has plummeted. Their oil profits have plummeted. Half of Russia's revenue depends on oil sales. But because our ally, Saudi Arabia, went along with this scheme, you wonder why the price of gas plummeted. It's gone down because Saudi Arabia opened the spigots there and flooded the market with cheap oil, excess oil, so that the price would go down. And that was the way that they helped out with these sanctions against Russia, and it hurt them. Okay, this was economic war. Now, although Obama had backed off trying to go in directly to Syria with the U.S. military, he still radically ramped up funding and support to the terrorist mercenaries on the ground there in Syria, which he calls moderate rebels, which is bullcrap. It's Al-Qaeda, most of them. When that didn't help enough, boosting those forces, Obama started using the U.S. Air Force. He sent the U.S. Air Force in to provide air support for the terrorist militias against the Assad regime and the Syrian army. And the tide of the victory turned in the favor of these U.S.-backed rebels. So after months of this, seeing that he was in jeopardy, Syria's president, Bashar al-Assad, he asked Russia for help. Russia sent in its Air Force, which began pounding the U.S.-backed militias. They attacked ISIS some, but they were also pounding the crap out of these U.S.-backed militias. This quickly became a tit-for-tat proxy battle between the U.S. and Russia inside Syria. And it culminated when a fighter jet from Turkey completely unexpectedly shot down a Russian fighter jet over Syria. Just like in Libya, somehow the terrorist rebel forces, they knew where the attack was going to go down. They were ready to rush in as soon as that happened. And they did. They went in and they shot one of the Russian pilots as he was parachuting down. Very quickly, a Russian military helicopter arrived to retrieve the other pilot to save him, but the U.S.-backed militia forces used a U.S.-made rocket launcher, and they blew up the Russian helicopter. They killed the pilot and the entire Russian rescue team. Okay, this was serious. Things were getting pretty nasty. I know you might find this boring, but the reason I'm telling it to you is this is important to understand. How did we get where we are today? I want you to understand the facts of how I know most of you listening to this are like, huh? What? Russia's upset at us? We're going to go to war? What's this all about? It's just a conspiracy theory. I'm explaining it to you, okay? At first, after this plane was shot down, Putin was furious with Turkey's President Erdogan. But Erdogan kept insisting that he hadn't authorized the Air Force to attack the Russian jet. And Putin cooled. Actually, if you check out the news today, Putin and Erdogan are working hand in hand in a lot of significant ways, much to the surprise of everyone who thinks that Putin should be really mad at Erdogan. But here's why. It's because Russian officials said that it was their belief that their intelligence services indicate that it was the CIA that was behind the order to bring down that Russian jet. They said a faction inside the Turkish military carried out the attack. These are people that are not loyal to the Erdogan government. Okay? And this is a faction that has apparently turned out to be real, because we saw just this summer, I was in Washington, D.C., saw it on the news when it happened, part of the Turkish military broke away and tried to initiate a military coup against the government of President Erdogan. And this led to a massive purge of the Turkish military by Erdogan in the days and weeks that followed. Now, for the last year, both the U.S. and Russia have had fighter jets battling opposing ground forces there in Syria. They are flying in the same skies. They are threatening to shoot down each other's fighter jets. They have come very close to running into each other a few times. But things really started to escalate just a few weeks ago. The last major stronghold of the U.S.-backed forces in Syria is the city of Aleppo. The victory of the Syrian-Russian alliance was close at hand. Okay, they were getting close. And seeing that they were about to lose, the U.S. worked with its allies to push through a ceasefire deal in the United Nations. Okay, a deal where the fighter jets of the U.S. and Russia were supposed to stop fighting each other's forces. Okay, so this was a deal that Russia agreed to and that they honored. But at a critical point during some of the ground battles, because this was not a ceasefire for the guys on the ground, at a critical point, the U.S. Air Force broke the ceasefire agreement by launching several sorties directly against the Syrian army. Blew them up, killed a bunch of them. And this allowed major advances by ISIS forces, gave them a fighting chance to get back into the fight. The U.S. officials said that the strikes were an accident. They said they thought they were attacking ISIS. Bullcrap. The Syrian government claims that it intercepted communications from the CIA operating out of Aleppo that warned the ISIS militants in advance of the strikes that were going to be taking place against the Syrian army by the U.S. Air Force. Vladimir Putin responded strongly to this U.S. attack on the Syrian army. Okay, this happened just about 2 weeks ago. A Russian airstrike was ordered. Russia struck a bunker just outside Aleppo, there in Syria. The bunker was full of the American CIA and Israeli Mossad agents, a couple Qataris and a few others, but primarily American CIA and Israeli Mossad, who were coordinating the terrorist militias there in Syria around Aleppo. These were the same people who had made the advanced communications to ISIS before the airstrike that I mentioned a minute ago. And so things have been spiraling downward very rapidly since then. Secretary of State John Kerry said this past week that the U.S. is considering imposing a no-fly zone over Syria. Okay, that's just a fancy way of saying that they're going to blow up every single Russian and Syrian plane in the skies over Syria. That's what it means. Okay? U.S. is allowed to fly their fighter jets and keep fighting against Assad, but Syrian and Russian jets will get blown up. Okay? Also this past week, the U.S. Army Chief, General Mark Milley, he gave a public speech where he didn't, oh, you should see this guy. It's like he thinks he's General Patton. He made this speech denouncing Russia, and he warned them that the United States was ready to destroy its enemies at any moment. Clearly, he was talking about Russia. And he actually said, here's a quote, "We will beat you harder than you've ever been beaten before." Okay, this is the this is the army chief. This is not some low-ranking guy just airing something. He would not have said that without authorization from the very top to make that threat. And Russia is taking these threats very seriously. They're not just blowing smoke back and forth. Remember, for the last 2 years, Vladimir Putin has been stating publicly that the United States was taking steps that were driving the world toward nuclear war. But he also said that he wasn't afraid of the U.S. and that he wasn't going to be able to stop the war. So he has certainly been doing things that you would expect a president to do if he honestly and truly believed that nuclear war was approaching. Let me go over a couple things. First, he used a pre-scheduled date just like a week ago to run a massive nuclear war readiness drill. It involved mobilizing 40 million Russian citizens. That may not seem like a lot for America, but that's 1/3 of the entire population of Russia that participated in a nuclear war drill. Putin has been recalling diplomats from around the world. He even ordered all of the Russian students studying abroad to come home immediately. The official government announcement said that the recall order was so urgent that it was expected that the students leave college immediately, even if it means that they can't complete their degrees. Okay, they say, we don't care if this screws up your schooling, come home now. Russia warned its diplomats that if they fail to abide by this recall order, that they don't do what they're being told, that it's going to have severe negative consequences on their careers. Okay, Russia's not screwing around. Putin also withdrew from a nuclear security pact with the United States, and he has moved nuclear missiles to the Polish border, where nearly 5,000 U.S. troops are currently stationed. The U.S. this past year has been building up U.S. troops there, not far from the Russian border. They put them in Poland. We're just protecting Poland from Russia, is what they say. What they're doing is surrounding Russia. One of the major things, though, that has taken place in the last handful of days that has caused things to escalate so quickly that it became public knowledge that the United States intends to finally deal with the problem of the war in Syria. Okay, they are saying, it came out that the U.S. is finally planning to go ahead with its own direct military confrontation with the Syrian government. If that actually happens, Russia will have to attack the United States. It's a guarantee. And that brings in the NATO nations of the UK, France, Germany. It brings in Saudi Arabia, Israel, Japan, brings on all of these allies of the United States if Russia attacks us. On the other side, Iran will definitely have to go to war. We'll see North Korea. We'll see China, among other nations that are going to get involved. They're all going to come to the aid of Russia because they're allies. It'll be World War III. Russia is definitely getting ready for this. They have deployed several S-300 missile defense systems to Syria because those are the systems that within a matter of seconds they can take out the U.S. Air Force jets in the event that the USA does actually try to implement a no-fly zone while they're trying to go in there and take over Syria. Putin has suddenly moved the much-dreaded Iskander missiles to Kaliningrad, which is a little Russian territory. It's sandwiched right between Poland and Lithuania. Okay, so they're just these Iskander missiles are right next to the U.S. forces that are there. These are not the kinds of things that Putin would do just for show. These are major steps. He's not one just to be provocative. He is really and truly preparing for a nuclear war. I am not being hyperbolic. Now, I can't say at this point whether a nuclear war is going to happen, but I can say with utmost certainty, utmost conviction, that this is the closest to nuclear war that the United States has been since the Cuban Missile Crisis during the Kennedy administration. And we know today that the U.S. was literally just hours away from a nuclear war with the Soviet Union during the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'm not alone in these assertions, even though you see almost a total blackout of the story in the mainstream media. This nuclear war preparation is all over the news in Russia right now. Just yesterday, Mikhail Gorbachev, the Soviet premier who faced off against President Reagan during the height of the Cold War, he said that the situation between the USA and Russia has reached a very dangerous point. So, why isn't CNN reporting on this? People, you need to finally accept it. The mainstream media outlets in America are not truly free press. They're just the propaganda arm of the U.S. government. I'm a history buff, and I've studied a lot of wars in great depth, and I'm telling you, I recognize we are in a serious situation right now. Let me read to you what they're saying outside the United States, okay? Because maybe our media is not reporting a lot on it, but they are around the world. Here's a quote from just the last handful of hours in the UK. This is from their paper, the Daily Star. Quote, "There are fears the next world war could literally kick off today as President Barack Obama meets foreign policy advisors to discuss battling Russia. The U.S. leader is set to lay out plans for military operations in Syria in a crunch meeting that could spell disaster for the world." Oh, yeah. It's not that there isn't anything coming out of the U.S. press. There is a little bit. ABC News just came out with this report. Quote, and I'm talking about came out just hours ago. Quote, "With tensions between Russia and the United States at their highest since the Cold War, there have been alarming signs coming out of Moscow that suggest the country is ready for war." Okay? Maybe you guys don't trust independent journalists like me and you just want to believe what the mainstream media says. Well, that's the mainstream media. The USA is not backing down from all this saber rattling from Russia, if that's what it is. And I've not even mentioned Iran yet. Iran is the third biggest player in the Syria conflict after the U.S. and Russia. Iran has been providing a lot of support for the Syrian government because they're strategic allies. The U.S. struck a blow at Iran yesterday by initiating a direct war with Yemen. Did you guys even know that we went to war with Yemen yesterday? Okay. Yemen is controlled right now by Iranian-supported Shiite Houthis. The U.S. has been down in the Gulf of Aden, south of Yemen, providing air support over the last several months for Saudi Arabia, as the Saudis have been at war with Yemen. Saudi Arabia's archenemy in that region is Iran. Okay, Iran has been keeping the Houthis supplied and supported to keep them in power, but yesterday the U.S. Navy launched at least 3 Tomahawk cruise missiles that hit targets inside Yemen. That's a direct act of war. It is as overt as you can get. It's a message not just to Iran, but also to Iran's ally, Russia. You guys, this is the critical time for you to be very skeptical of any official stories that we hear suddenly coming out from the U.S. government. You'll know what the official government story is when the mainstream media starts putting out a particular narrative. Okay, because the mainstream media, they're just the mouthpiece, they're the propaganda wing for the government. They're going to start talking about how the Russians are doing something aggressive toward us or toward our allies. So watch now for false flag attacks because they're coming. This is how the CIA operates. One may have already taken place. I'm just starting to analyze a major incident in Ukraine that just happened. It's alleged that a pro-Russian militia there shot down a Ukrainian helicopter that was full of NATO military members. Watch for this, if on Saturday, sometime during the day on Saturday, if the U.S. announces that Vladimir Putin was somehow behind that helicopter strike, you can bet that this was a CIA operation. One similar to the one that flopped a year or so back in Ukraine when they used anti-Russian militia to shoot down Malaysian Airlines number 17, Flight 17, and then they tried to frame Russia for the attack. Listen, things are very fluid right now. I'm trying hard to stay on top of all this. It's early in the morning. I've been up all night analyzing these reports. I can hardly finish with one major news item before another one develops, and it's the middle of the night. But I want you to know the truth as to why the USA is suddenly going to DEFCON 3. It's either because the U.S. totally screwed up, or it's because the CIA is putting a major gambit in play, and I'll explain. Right now, NBC News has a shocking report that just came out. They revealed that the CIA is preparing right now for a cyber strike, a cyber attack against Russia. Here's the quote from NBC News. The Obama administration is contemplating an unprecedented cyber covert action against Russia in retaliation for alleged Russian interference in the American presidential election, U.S. intelligence officials told NBC News. Current and former officials with direct knowledge of the situation say the CIA has been asked to deliver options to the White House for a wide-ranging clandestine cyber operation designed to harass and embarrass the Kremlin leadership. Are these people crazy? They're accusing Russia of trying to screw up the U.S. presidential election? It just makes no sense. Much to the dismay, I've not said this in any videos before because I don't want to tick off my subscribers. I know that a lot of you are Trump supporters, but I'm just going to say it. Much to your dismay, I'm sorry to tell you, Trump has no chance whatsoever of winning. It's over. Based strictly on the number of states in which Hillary Clinton currently holds a solid, insurmountable lead, she basically already has all of the electoral college votes that she needs to win. For Trump to win, he would have less than 3 weeks to come from behind and flip about 12 states that are currently leaning toward Clinton. Trump wouldn't have to just beat her in one of those states. He would have to flip every single one, all 12 of them, in order for him to win. And his victory would be razor thin. He would barely win over Hillary if he could get all 12 of those. This isn't rocket science. You guys need to ignore all those national polls. They are meaningless. I know what I'm talking about. I've managed lots of political campaigns in my life, including some pretty big ones. Trump cannot win this election unless an absolute miracle were to happen. Russia would never be able to hide the amount of election manipulation that would be necessary to flip this election to Trump. Okay, so this is another false flag. Don't fall for the just trust us on this garbage that the American government keeps putting out. If you trusted Bush and his administration back when they swore to us that the war with Iraq was needed, that it was justified because they had irrefutable, certain evidence that Saddam Hussein had tons of weapons of mass destruction and the intent to use them against us, please learn from your mistake. Okay, if you were fooled once, please don't be fooled twice. Vladimir Putin is not an idiot. Okay, I know it sounds like I'm praising him. I'm not a super big fan, but I do admire his strategy. He's smart. He's like an expert chess player. You don't make stupid moves, and this would be a stupid move. There is no way Russia could change the outcome of this election without everybody finding out about it and there being major repercussions against Russia. I'm not sure I even believe that the CIA was even working on a cyber attack against Russia. You remember when I said that if the mainstream media is pushing a certain narrative about this conflict, that there's likely something very fishy about it? I suspect that what is more likely than NBC News somehow getting leaked information about a secret CIA plot is that the true plot is the release of the leak itself. I've got more ideas on this, but I don't want to share them until I've researched it further. Besides, as I write this, the big headline on CNN is about 8 women who are claiming that Trump groped them. The anti-Trump propaganda, you guys have seen it. It has been so heavy and unceasing in all of the major media, including on Fox News, that the real story about election manipulation is how our own media is doing everything in its power to ensure that Hillary Clinton gets elected. That's the real scandal. And I'm not trying to defend Trump. I'm not voting for Trump. I'm not a Trump supporter. Not a Hillary supporter, but I'm definitely not a Trump supporter. People, I am not in a position to know with absolute certainty that the U.S. has moved to DEFCON 3. They wouldn't be telling us right now openly if they had. But I have reviewed the analysis by the DEFCON reporting system, and I agree with their assessment. I agree that the actions of our government and those of Russia are of such exquisitely significant consequence right now, and I'm historically speaking, that we are very much on the edge of World War III. I pray that cooler heads prevail. Obama backed away from confrontation with Russia once already, back when Putin had refused to back down from the original U.S. aggression in Syria. Hopefully, Obama will chicken out and back down again. But I'm not going to wait to see if that happens. I believe we are also approaching a massive drop in the stock market. I've been following the charts, and what I'm seeing looks eerily familiar. It's entirely possible that we have returned to a long-term bear market, that we are not going to go back and exceed the highs, and that we are on the verge of some massive sell-offs. Everybody knows this at this point. Our economy is very fragile right now. It wouldn't take much, either from a conventional or a cyber attack by either Russia or China, to just collapse our economy. We know that both Russia and China have spent the last 2 years buying up physical gold at an alarming, shocking rate, and that the major world banks have been telling their clients in recent weeks to start preparing for major economic turmoil. They're telling them to buy gold. So between the military situation and the economic situation, I am seeing enough to justify taking action in the event of a significant event that could result in a run on gas stations here in America, a run on grocery stores. You know, if nothing happens, the worst I will have is a full tank of gas and a fully stocked pantry and a little egg on my face. But if something does happen and I didn't prepare for it, that's the real tragedy. I urge all of you to not panic, but I do offer my opinion that things are going to remain tense between Russia and our country for the foreseeable future. Okay, maybe nothing is going to happen. Let's pray that nothing happens. But I do believe it's best to be prepared just in case. If these topics are of interest to you, I've got a video archive full of reports on many of the things that I've been describing in this video. Subscribe to my channel, please, at youtube.com/prepare333 if you want ongoing updates on this situation. For the End Times News Report, I'm Jake Morphonios.